All right. Welcome everyone to the June Torus community meeting. I'm Amanda Buddymeyer, the Technical Product Manager for Torus. So I will be your host today. And let's get into it. So as always, I kind of like to start with our working product vision. We often in this meeting get into some more granular details and we can get into the weeds a little bit. I think it's helpful if we always remember what are we all here trying to do, and what is it that Torus is trying to accomplish at a higher level and an aspirational level. And that is transforming higher education through the science of learning. So let's just start off on that thought. All right, for our agenda today, our agenda has me talking about agendas. I'm going to go to that table that is on the Torus website that has the planned agendas for Torus community meetings for 2024 and talk a little bit about how I've shifted that around and what you can expect for this month and next month. Then I'm going to talk about a document that I literally finished writing this morning that is about how to request features and report bugs for Torus using the Torus triage board. This has been, there's a lot of people who have been using this board, and I kind of, will just talk to them about how to use it and help folks troubleshoot it like one-on-one. But there's been a lot of demand for this, so I'm glad I was finally able to get this this out and onto the website. Then we're going to talk a little bit about our new student interface that we will be releasing as part of Torus version 28, which has a release date of July 24th of this year. And we'll end up talking about the Torus Roadmap Snapshot. And this document is updated every month, so we'll look at the latest one that was created for today's meeting. And we'll finish up with some final thoughts. All right, so to talk about the schedule and agendas, I'm actually going to go to, sorry, where is my browser? Okay. Is everyone looking at Google? I always get confused about how this works when I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yes, Google. Yes. Thank you, Michael Bet, for being my confirmer.
Sure.
So I will be sending out for all of the documents and the links I'm talking about today. When I send a follow-up email, I am going to include links. I don't expect you to like be furiously taking notes and memorizing what I'm doing, but I always like to do this from Google just so that you can kind of see and maybe remember next time that you don't necessarily have to remember these links. You can kind of look them up on your own. So I'm just going to type OLI Torus into Google. The first thing that comes up is actually our main production Torus instance for the Torus application. But the second thing that comes up is from the Torus website. So you can see this is oli.cmu.edu. It's the OLI website, and it's the Torus section of that. So I'm going to click. Of course, I am doing this live, so it's going to be slow. This is actually the specific page that I want, so I don't have to navigate to a different page. But if I did want to get here, I would go to this Torus menu on the OLI website and then come down to Torus Community. And I'm going to scroll down until I see this table that has topics and dates for Torus community meetings for this year. This is where you find the recordings of our previous meetings. And I also have the Torus Roadmap Snapshots for each month that link from this date. So if you want to go on like a tour of past roadmaps, you can do that. Though the most recent one is here, June 7th, and you also can go to this link that says latest Torus product roadmap snapshot, which in this case will link to June 7th because that's the latest one. Now, if you had been looking at this table previously, then you would have seen that one of the things I was planning on discussing in our June meeting is a discussion of user experience, research, and design. And that was going to be a conversation that involved our user experience design team, who are composed of Jess Fortunato and Preeti Sharma. So I ended up moving that down to August. And first of all, I have a couple things that I want to talk about in today's meeting that I think are a little bit more time sensitive that knocked that out. And also I realized after I made that schedule that Jess is on vacation today, so she's not going to be available for the meeting. So we'll talk about that in August. And today we'll talk about the agenda I just discussed. I also want to mention that for next month's meeting for July, I am going to be on vacation, so I am going to cancel that meeting. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a really good in-depth pre-recorded demo of version 28. And I will post it no later than July 5th, which would have been the date of that meeting. And I will send out an email to all of you to let you know, to remind you that the meeting is canceled and to let you know that that recording is ready. And I think that actually works out well, because in version 28, it's not just a regular release for us. It's not only all of the things that we have built since we did the release for version 27, which is kind of what we normally do in a release. We finish up the last release, and then we start working on the next release, and we work on it for about 3 months, and then we release. But in this case, we also are putting into production our new student interface, which we've been calling the NG, or Next Generation Student Interface. It's a complete redesign and improvement and better user experience for our students. And it's been something that our development team has been working on since last year. So, and I am going to be talking more about that in a little bit, but it's going to require a longer demo than I would usually have time for. Especially because I often talk about other things in this meeting other than just doing a demo. And I will make a nice video that really gets into that new interface, as well as our other new features. And I will do some nice timestamps for you so that you can kind of navigate through that. And I'll try to make sure that I'm getting good detail. And of course, since it's a pre-record, then I won't have any of the issues that sometimes happen with a live demo. So you can look out for that. Before I move on, any questions or comments about this schedule or that demo that I'm getting on post? All right. So the next thing that I was going to talk about on my agenda is the documentation for how you request a feature or report a bug in Torus. And I do want to mention, as I'm doing this, I just saw something came up in the chat. Because I'm sharing my screen, it's not always easy for me to see what's in the chat. Oh, July 5th is a university holiday this year. Well, even better that I'm canceling the meeting then. So everything will be posted by then, and yeah, we'll proceed. Yeah, if you do have a comment, it might be easier if you just speak up, because sometimes it's hard for me to see when there's a chat. All right, so the documentation I just created has been posted on the same website. So there's a new link under important links here, and it is feature requests and bug reports for Torus. I also will include, again, all of these links when I send the follow-up email, but for now I'm just gonna click on this. So this is a long document. That's part of why folks, if you work at OLI, then you probably have witnessed either yourself or other people asking me about this document for, I feel like, at least a month now, probably longer than that. And I'm always like, I'm working on it. It's almost done. I'm working on it. And the reason is it just turned into a monster. Once I would put like how you do this, and then I'd be like, oh, I really should explain this other part. So this is a web page. It's not paginated, but just out of curiosity, I like went to print it out to see how many pages it would be, and it was 26 pages long. So what I am additionally going to do, I don't have it for today, but I will get it to you, is like a quick start guide, something that is 1 to 2 pages that it will be your very quick, like, how do I, like, what are the most basics I need to know so that I can create, a ticket on the Torus triage board. And this can be more of like a reference document, but I put a lot of information in here about finding issues on there. Well, I'll briefly go over the table of contents. I also want to say, as I'm looking at this document, please don't stand on ceremony. If you have questions or something, someplace where you want me to stop and talk about it a little bit more, then please speak up. You don't have to wait till the end. So because this is a website that I made with Notion, it does have this nice table of contents over here that will pop out. I also put a table of contents kind of toward the top of the document. The first thing I do want to point out here is that I've kind of put prominently here is this is not this document, the processes described here, the Torus triage board are not the process that you want to use if you need immediate assistance. So if you are using Torus and something is going wrong immediately and you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish, or one of your students can't accomplish what they need to accomplish, hopefully these things happen, not that often, but this process is really not designed to be, getting a quick, immediate response. So I have the email address for OLI help. There also is the tech support link that's in the top right navigation of every page of the Torus application. And that's really what you want to do if there is something like you need to talk to someone right now, as opposed to using this board. All right, so looking at our table of contents, I kind of do an overview of what is our Torus triage board in Jira. That's our single source of truth that we use. I talked about it, I think, in last month's meeting. Our single source of truth for feature requests and bug reports for Torus. Feature requests and bug reports. I actually did say that right the first time. And then I kind of go through some information about how do you find issues that are already on the board. Once you find issues and you're looking at them, how do you read it? Like, what does the information mean?
Reflect the tenor of that day. And I'd like to think that we did.
Yeah. On this day, President Biden is also obviously his big speeches and.
Okay. Moving on.
We know what Ben's doing.
I mean, I can't blame him. So I appreciate anyone who's paying attention to my long monologue here. All right. Yeah, how do you find information in a ticket? What information is there and how do you find it? I talk about creating issues. So how do you make your own and like what are some different options you have there? And then I really get into like what happens next, right? So you've put in your issues and or maybe you've seen other issues of interest that other people have put in, like what happens after that? So I talk about our triaging process. I actually have a section here that is specifically called disagreeing or discussing with the product manager, and that should be a signal to you that I welcome feedback. I'm really fine with you telling me that if your ticket has been triaged in a particular way that you don't agree with that. I mean, I hope that we can come to an agreement and that we can understand each other. So it's not like I'm thinking, wahaha, I love disagreeing with people, but I want to hear what you have to say, and I want it to be a dialogue. So I talk about that several times throughout this document, but I made a special section about it. And I also want to call out this section, which is most of the folks in this meeting, I think, have been here longer than I have. I, at this point, have been here for somewhere between 7 and 8 months. And this Torus triage board is something I created. So if you were here before me, then you might be familiar with the fact that before we had the Torus triage board, we had a process where you put issues into GitHub. And so this is kind of talking about, I mean, the TLDR of that is that we have your issues, we're working through them, but if it's easier for you to put in a new issue, you're welcome to do that, but you don't have to. But that's a section as well. And then I kind of generally talk about how that goes through to implementation and how everything on that board relates to our roadmap and how things are prioritized that way. I think that what I just said is probably everything I was planning on saying about this document. I wasn't going to get any more in depth than that. But before I move on from this document, I want to ask, does anyone have any questions or anything that you want me to kind of click into or go into in more detail? All right, I'm sure that you are all just very eager to get into my 26-page Torus triage document, so you can always give me comments later. All right. Going back to my slides. Did that. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about this new student interface for version 28. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, which I'm going to assume is probably most of the people in this meeting have not seen this new interface yet, it is a completely redesigned student interface. We do want this to be and have reason to believe based on research and hope that this will be a better experience for our students. However, there are sometimes you know, there's some trickiness that can go along with a transition from one to a different interface, and we want to make sure that goes as smoothly as possible. Now, our release date for version 28 is July 24th. And that means that, first of all, like we have tried to time this in a way that there are not a lot of Torus classes that are in flight when that release happens. But there are some. Off the top of my head, I think if I remember, there was like 12 or 14 course sections. So for those course sections, students are going to go into the Torus interface on July 23rd, and the interface is going to look one way, and they're going to go in on July 24th, and it's going to look completely different. All of the content is still going to be there. It's going to be in the same order. It's going to be, you know, none of that is going away, but it's going to be a very different user experience. So I would say that priority one, because of the harshness of that transition, is to make sure that we're reaching out to those instructors and we're kind of preparing them for the fact that this experience is going to be changing so that it's not quite as jarring for the students. I mean, I think that given the usability of the new interface, I don't think it's going to be difficult for students to kind of, you know, to go with the flow, but there could be things where they're just not used to it, or they're confused about that happening. So that, I think, is top priority. Any course that is in flight when that happens. And it actually is relative, that's kind of the easiest group for us to identify, because we can tell in Torus what courses are in flight. You know, we know what course sections are happening right now. So it's relatively easy for us to say, oh, here are those, you know, here are those course sections. And given the academic calendar, it's unlikely that there's something that's going to start on, say, you know, a surprise start like right for the course that date, and we're kind of caught off guard by that. The second population that we want to make sure we're reaching out to are instructors and authors of courses that will be running in Torus in the fall. And depending on the academic calendar, with a July 24th release date, there are some institutions where the start of the fall semester is going to happen pretty shortly after that. And we know that this isn't something where a lot of our instructors just come in at the last minute to prepare. A lot of them are you know, even thinking and preparing for this now, and they do it in advance. So we want to make sure we're reaching out and communicating with those folks that they might be preparing in what is currently you know, the current environment, and it's going to change potentially pretty close to when their courses are starting. We are planning on proactively reaching out to folks that we think are going to have courses that are you know, live in Torus in the fall semester. That is a little bit less straightforward than the summer courses, where, you know, we can kind of just look and see what's an active course right now, because you know, there can be folks who maybe are planning on doing something and maybe they haven't done that in the past, or maybe they haven't, you know, started to work on those course sections yet. So that we're trying a couple of different ways to make sure that we're getting as many of those folks as we can. We're doing just general messaging to our community and asking folks, and this is actually part of what I'm doing here. If you're going to be involved in a fall course, reach out and let me know, and make sure that you're on the list of folks we're planning on reaching out to. We're looking at what activity is happening in Torus right now. We're looking at what courses historically have had a fall course section in the past. So we have a couple of different ways that we're looking at that, but please do reach out, just shoot me an email or some sort of message if you're going to have a course section in the fall, so that I can double check that. And what we're going to do is, for all of these folks, instructors and authors who are who have these course sections, then we want to invite them to look and kind of navigate through the new student interface in a staging environment well in advance of when we do the deployment to production. We've talked about doing a couple of test deployments, so you potentially can actually see what's going to happen where, when that deployment first happens and the new student interface, like you can see what your course is going to look like. And there's a couple of things that we're hoping to accomplish by doing that. One is, as I said, just making sure that instructors are prepared, that as they're kind of getting ready, for their courses, that they know that that's happening. I also know that, we do have technical support, of course, for Torus, but there's a lot of times when instructors might be talking to students and helping them kind of navigate or referencing different aspects of the interface. And I think from that perspective, it's helpful for them to know what the new interface is going to look like in terms of supporting their students. We're being very careful to go through and kind of look at what our course is looking like in the new interface, and are there any places where these courses that were kind of designed with our current interface are things that don't look quite right in the new interface or don't operate as expected in the new interface. So we're trying to do a really comprehensive job of testing on our end. And I think that the number of potential issues for courses is relatively small, both because of that extensive testing, but also because most of what is changing in our new interface has to do with more the navigation and the kind of top level pages of Torus, as opposed to changes in the pages where most of the content appears. So where most of that course content is, it is going to look quite similar to what it looked like in it looks like in current Torus. But still, we want to be really conservative here in terms of making sure we're creating as many opportunities as possible for folks to look through those courses and say, is there anything that doesn't look right? Or, this came across clearly in the old interface, but it's maybe confusing in the new one. So that's another reason that we want folks to be looking through, is to kind of help us with looking through their courses and making sure things look like they expect it to. And I think probably the final reason that we want to invite folks to come and look at this in advance of our deployment in July is that there are a lot of new features that exist in the new interface. There are things like, the way that you can put in introductions to different modules and kind of contextualize modules is has some new features around it. We have a whole new feature called social annotation, which allows, actually within the application, I think it's called Notes now, where students can just pick part of a page and put a comment on it and maybe share that with other people in the class, ask a question and have a discussion right there on the page about specific page elements. So there are new features, and we want to make sure we want to give folks an opportunity to maybe take advantage of those features if they want to. So the bottom line here is we will be reaching out to authors and instructors to have you come in and look at that new interface. I strongly recommend that you come in and do that with us in advance of the new interface going into production. And if that's something that is going to be relevant for you, please do reach out to me just so that I can double check and make sure you're one of the people on our list to reach out to. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Before I move on from this, I do want to point out these two little boxes I have on the right side of the screen. As I mentioned, I will be posting a good demo of everything in version 28, but that includes this new interface. So that will be something good for you as a kind of a reference. And also we're going to make some lightweight documentation. And as someone who just created a 26-page document kind of by accident, I do want to assure you that I am very aware that our instructors and our faculty members and members of the Torus community are busy, and you are not going to have time to read a 26-page document. If I'm like, here, you can figure out everything about the new interface, it's very long and involved. So we are going to be working to come up with a balance of something that's short and easy for you folks to look at, but that's also kind of guiding you through what is the new student experience and what are the new features, so that can be a resource for you as we release this new interface. All right. I think I already did that part. Okay, the last thing on my agenda is looking at our latest Torus Roadmap Snapshot. And to do that, I'm going to go back to the website. I'm like always on the wrong screen. Back to the website here because we have that linked here, the latest Torus Product Roadmap Snapshot. And as I mentioned, this and this June 7th here, they link to the same thing. I also want to point out that this is not the only place you can find the Roadmap Snapshot on the website. I can also, going back to this Torus menu, I can go to the Torus project. Again, whenever I'm doing something live, my computer is always slow. If I scroll down on this page to this section that talks about the roadmap, we also, by the way, have this nice handy table that once we have dates, it will show you the code freeze date and release date for upcoming releases. But we also have the latest roadmap snapshot that we'll see too. Once again, having that product vision to have that be something that we center as we're looking at this. So I think this page here is probably the page that most folks spend the most time looking at. It's a moving for release window showing, we do quarterly releases. So this is 1 calendar year of releases for Torus. And it will show you kind of at a high level what each of these, what is planned for that release. I think what I'm going to focus on as I go into this, and again, please feel free to bring up any questions or comments. Don't stand on formality for this. I'm probably going to focus on this page that talks about what are the changes since the last roadmap snapshot. So as it mentions here, we have moved back our version 28 code freeze. It was actually originally supposed to be today, and we pushed it back a week to June 4th so that we have a little bit more time to finish up and make sure we're at a good stopping point for some of the features that we're building. The next thing I want to mention is that in last month's roadmap, then right where it says authoring analytics improvements here, it said data processing. And if you looked at the detail on these pages later here where I have more detail about each of these items, it would be very vague. What it was basically saying is that we've reached a point with data processing with Torus where we kind of scaled beyond our previous architecture. And I think that a lot of you know that because our data processing was quite brittle. There were queries that would be pretty slow to run. And one of the most prominent aspects of that is problems that folks have had with downloading data for data shop. The way that we needed to fix that was to implement a data warehouse, which is basically a database, a data storage system that is designed to be more scalable and allow us to get a lot bigger, have a lot more requests, a lot more data, and to handle that elegantly. But the reason that this data processing was so vague in last month's snapshot is because during this quarter when we've been building version 28, our director of software engineering, Darren, has been working on a proof of concept. He's basically been building out a data warehouse, a kind of mini data warehouse architecture to make sure that his ideas for how to implement that were going to work. And I didn't want to make any promises on anything until we knew what the results of that proof of concept were. And it turns out the proof of concept went very well. So at this point, we have an idea of what we're going to be building from a data processing standpoint for version 29. And that is that Darren is going to be implementing kind of the MVP, minimum viable product version of a data warehouse. And the first two things that we're going to be tackling with that initial stab at a data warehouse is one, making sure we have a data shop download process that works reliably and is robust. And also adding robustness. The second one is adding robustness to our authoring data processing that happens within Torus. So when you're running and trying to pull up data in the authoring interface, in particular, it can be very slow. And this process will make that faster and more reliable. So there's other things that we want to do and expanding to other sorts of analytics and other interfaces and making data processing more comprehensively, moving it into this data warehousing solution. But those are the two things that you can expect from our 29 release is reliable and robust data shop export and faster analytics running in the authoring interface. So one thing in here that is completely new is this, what I'm calling account type navigation. And again, you can find more information about this here. There's a nice blurb that's explaining it. So this is something that was not at all on the last roadmap. So I feel like I should talk about a little bit more like why we just inserted this into version 29. We have, and any of you who have used Torus, which I'm going to assume is everyone, you know that the initial logon experience, if you're going directly to Torus as opposed to accessing it through an LMS, is not really a great user experience. Our landing page is kind of confusing. Our support folks tell us that every semester we have a certain number of students who like accidentally make an authoring account, or just people who aren't sure what part of the interface they're in, and it can be kind of confusing. So, and this has kind of risen to the point where it was just clear that we had to do something about it. So this feature, which I've seen the designs for it, it is beautiful. I'm very excited about it. Is going to make a whole new landing page. It's going to make a new account creation process, login process. Within the application, it's going to be much clearer about what type of account you're using and how you can move between account types. So I think this is just something that's important to our entire population. And it was just important enough that we really needed to make sure that we made room for it. So we've done as lightweight an initial implementation of this as we can. Our general strategy is to try to make something as lightweight for our first stab at a new feature, and then we'll iterate and we'll see what kind of data we get back as we're doing research with users about how they're using this new account navigation process. And then in future releases, we can kind of iterate to make that better. But we have some basic improvements we've made here that I think are going to make a big difference. Other changes that we've made since last time. Oh, the main thing that got booted out of version 29 to kind of make room for some of these things is this certificate capabilities. This is the capability for a course to yield a certificate. This is something that existed or actually currently exists in the OLI legacy system, though the way it's implemented in legacy is not very robust and also requires a lot of involvement from our development team every time a new certificate is made. So this is a feature that's really important to us, but we knew that we didn't want to implement it in Torus the same way that it was done in the legacy system because it's just not scalable. So not only did we need to move this to kind of make room for some things here, but I have to say, even separate from that, it just proved to be a bigger issue with bigger questions and some bigger, some more time-consuming research and design than we originally anticipated. So We just weren't ready to implement it in version 29. It got moved to version 30. I think this is going to be a really important thing once we get it implemented. I know this is something that there's a lot of folks in our community that want. So I do want to emphasize that this didn't get booted because we didn't think it was important. It just was, in order to do it right, we needed more time. To accommodate that, we did move this LTI activities into version 31. And I think the main thing that we moved out of version 31 was going to, and into like a future release, was actually something we were going to have to move out anyway. We had some student-centered items around student analytics and student user experience. And we really can't, as you see here for version 31, the release date for version 31 is going to be in March of next year. And we really can't be doing those kinds of student changes in the middle of a semester. So that's going to have to wait. Moving all that student stuff out actually created some space in version 31. And what we've replaced it with is this kind of general UX improvement for our admin interface. This one I think is important. I think that you know, our admins do so much to support the rest of our user population, and they really work tirelessly at that. But because we have a relatively small number of admins and they tend to be internal users and like expert super users, I think that they don't get as much love. It's always it always seems to be easier to be like, oh, well, this improvement is going to affect hundreds of users, whereas we have this small number of admins. Or, you know, you have workarounds for these processes that can be really time consuming. And it not only makes their lives more frustrating, but it actually impacts their ability to support everyone else. Like when they have a better user experience, that makes it, you know, better for everyone. So we are going to see what we can do in release 31 to improve their experience as well. Just going to look and see if I missed anything. I think that's it. I wasn't necessarily planning on going into, you know, the details of these specific features, but I'm happy to do that if anyone wants to talk about anything in particular, has any questions, or wants to bring anything up. So are there any questions? All right. So that's actually all I had for you folks today. So as a reminder, the July 5th meeting is going to be canceled, but I will be posting a version 28 demo on that same time frame, as well as the July update for the roadmap snapshot. I do have a link here to the Torus website, but of course I will include that, you know, any relevant links in my follow-up email, as well as letting you know when the recording of this meeting is posted. And I do say here that I'll let you know when I post the latest Torus Roadmap Snapshot, but that's actually already up on the web, so I don't need to let you know about that. Any final questions before I end the meeting, or topics of discussion while we're all here? All right, thanks everybody. Have a good weekend.